Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 9 of True Lies. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I love at the heart of this, it's about the team being completely out of sync. Obviously, Harry and Helen are having their complicated spot because it's like, hey, we could die at any moment, and that's kind of scary, and obviously they haven't really been able to kind of have that normal everyday life, considering now we're not only does she know about Harry being a spy, but also she's a part of it now. So that's interesting too, because you're like, if she wasn't aware of Harry being a spy, like, they didn't get to sadly spend as much time as they wanted together. Either way, now they do, but it's more so as operatives and not the intimate, husband and wife duo that they are. So that kind of comes as a complication. I even love that it's like she wants to have some sexy time, and he's like, I can't. That terrorist we arrested hit me in the. He's like, I'm injured. She's like, well, I'm tired too. So later on, it's like, hey, I recovered, so we could do it. But problem is, they get called in by counterintelligence, which. That guy's kind of a dick. I mean, it's like, he's just kind of he's super, he said, Helen said something, he's like, yes, Helen, obviously that's why. And I forgot, I think Gibbs said something, he was like, yes, I was about to get to that, thanks for interrupting. He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And, Helen was like, sarcasm. It's just, he seemed like kind of a douchebag. So... But yeah, because the opening of this episode was a guy getting killed, and it turns out that guy was an Omega operative, an ex-Omega operative, who got retired 15 years ago. Well, he was part of a team. He's actually the second body on a 4-person team that ended up dropping. So now they have to find out, first and foremost, who is dropping these Omega sector people. How did they find them? Because these people are retired, new names, disappeared. How did you do that? So there's 2 operatives they have to find, and it's Arnie, who's played by Tom Arnold, and I kept being like, wait, wasn't Tom Arnold in the first True Lies? In the movie True Lies? And I was like, which, yes, he was. I kept, because I was like, I know there's something he did with Arnold Schwarzenegger, wasn't it? I was like, was it True Lies that I'm thinking about, or did they do something else together? And I might be conflating it with that. But I was like, no, at the very least, it was True Lies. Because once again, I don't have as many memories of that movie. I think I've seen bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever seen the entire movie. But either way, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Especially because his character's named Arnie, so I was like, that has to be for one, you got someone from the original movie, plus you also got someone who, also had no idea, once again, looking at the cast, I was like, Eliza Dushku, played their daughter, Dana. I was like, holy crap, I didn't know that. Also, the late Bill Paxton was in that too. And, I was just looking through some of that cast. I was like, oh, interesting. Either way, tangents and all that aside, but it's like him being Arnie. It's like that had to be on purpose. It had to be an homage to Arnold. So Schwarzenegger in that regard. You get what I'm trying to say. Either way, this is once again the whole time. I mean, obviously the parallels between the missions and the team. That's always supposed to be the thing. But obviously, Gibb is going through it with the whole. Ava thing, they haven't really talked. I guess word's gotten around because Gibbs trying to be like, no, it was a mutual breakup. It's like, no, it's a pretty one-sided breakup in my opinion, because she found out you were doing something stupid like using an AI to text her, and obviously her feelings were hurt. And the fact is that Luther's like, hey, I heard about that. It's like, ooh, Ava's here in the hallway. I'm going to leave you to it. Their awkward exchange. So she doesn't even really want to talk to him. Then there's the whole situation between Luther and Maria. They aren't in sync like they used to be, because I think it's because of the whole Quinn of it all. It turns out she also got a dog, Kevlar, which even he brought up, which I thought was kind of douchey when he was like, yeah, you got that dog, Kevlar, the moment I started dating Quinn or something. The moment you found out about me and Quinn dating, it's like, it's just... That whole dynamic is kind of, once again, I guess they've never dated anyone else since they broke up, because they would seem like they were a tight-knit enough team beforehand, but now it seems like they can't, their ebb and flow is completely off. So, and once again, everyone in the team's kind of going, I mean, this wouldn't be the first time. I mean, we've seen that previously too, but it's like everyone's kind of going through it now, and they're not on their best, I mean, I think Helen and Harry are still pretty compatible, but it's still a thing of, yeah, there's some arguments kind of going on throughout the episode Gibbs is like, no, stay focused. He's trying to like deep dive into work to try so he doesn't really think about it. Hard to do that when you still got Ava as your background on your phone. I mean, it's still a recent enough breakup that I don't see you like immediately getting rid of all that stuff, you know. But so yeah, we meet the surviving members of the team. We get introduced to Arnie. He's kind of like the recluse, like crazy dude. Fact of the matter, he's got a whole bunch of refrigerators, which he's saying like, oh, those are like used for tactical defense. I guess maybe I don't know if he ever explained what the fridges fully were. He said they were like they had some tactical purpose, but I don't know if it's like gives you more like cover, like in case stuff pops off or whatever. So. But he also didn't want to visit Sharon because we find out him and Sharon were in a similar spot as Harry and Helen. Granted, it's like, once again, their situation is a little different. I mean, granted, Harry was a spy when him and Helen got together, but she wasn't a spy. She wasn't working for Omega Sector. I think that's the interesting thing where it's like, it's still applicable, but I still think maybe they benefit from the fact is that they were together 17 years before she became an operative as well, versus like, hey, you were working together and then you started dating, like a potentially like a Luther and Maria and even Gibbs and Ava. So it's like you kind of, once again, you get all sides of that. Like, I mean, especially when Arnie wanted nothing to do with Sharon. It's kind of like, right, you want to get Sharon, you might as well kind of leave me. But it's like, no, we're not going to go 150 miles in the other direction just so you can avoid being around your ex. And it's like, right. She seemed like everything was cool and copacetic until she turned around and punched him in the face. I even love later on, she's like, oh my God, did you get hit? He was like, yes, by you. I'm still bleeding from when you punched me in the face, because she thought he got shot. I love that bit. But yeah, they're kind of at each other's throats because where the team is now, it's kind of got everyone thinking about things, because obviously him talking about not dating someone at work and how that kind of erodes a relationship. The fact of the matter is the team fell apart because they were out of sync, which has got Maria and Luther thinking like, wait, that's not us. You know, it's like coffee that we ended up spilling early in the episode. That's nothing. Then they bump into each other. It's like, oh yeah, it was a tactical mishap. It's like, what? Us going around a house was a tactical mishap? Like, how did something like simple like that kind of like throw us for a loop? And it's like, oh, neither one of them is paying attention, like, as opposed to the point like, oh, you just missed a turn. Oh, who's distracted now? And it's like, to be fair, you guys were talking, but it's like, right, you're supposed to be top class spies. You're supposed to be able to multitask. So yeah, it's an ugly situation, to the point Gibbs is kind of like, all right, I'm going to step in here. I'm going to need everyone to go separate. Like, Harry, you and Arnie here, Helen, you and Sharon here. We find out some of like the more like toxic elements of the relationship, to the point that Arnie's like, yeah, she put a live grenade in his shower just because I forgot her birthday. And then I love that Harry's about to go past it, but he's like, wait, live grenade? And Arnie's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, wow, okay. Because they were trying to figure out who could come after them and who would know to come after them. And it's like, well, it turns out there was a member of their team, Lance, was aware of some like evil cabal organization known as Cripsis, but no one believed him. They thought he was just being paranoid because he got super obsessive about it, and he believed that to be the case. Like, oh, this is this thing, I know it's real, and he kept going deeper and deeper and deeper in his belief about it. But everyone else on the team just thought he was crazy. But now they ended up finding Lance had another place, and it turns out, oh, he went super deep into this, but even to the point they're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. First and foremost, here's some pictures of us from episode 1 from the Paris situation. And then it's like, oh, like the guy that died at the beginning of the episode, it's like, no, he died well after Lance did, so why is his picture already X'd out? I was like, oh, so Lance, because I was initially thinking like it's going to be someone on a team that turned on them. I was thinking, well, Lance and the other guy are already dead, so I was like, it's most likely going to end up being I was like, it's going to either be Sharon or Arnie, but it's like, nope. It ended up being Lance. He was kind of like the tactical tech. No, because like I know Arnie was like the more tactical person. Maybe. I think Sharon was more the lead. Like, they both balanced each other out, where it's like we're both, like, it's kind of like he kind of took charge, but she was the one that kind of really, really took charge, so. But anyway, it turns out Lance blames the whole team because like their last operation led to him getting shot and he was kind of bleeding out and no one came to rescue him. But it's like, no, Arnie tried to, but there was too much like smoke, we couldn't get to you in time and stuff. And it's like, if you guys had listened to me, I told you that Crypsis was a thing. They're like, yeah, but no one, the agency, Omega Sector, nor the team really believed him. But for him, that's the point. I was part of the team. We were a team. We were supposed to trust each other. It's just a sad thing where it's just like that team just like lost their ebb and flow. And maybe those were already some of those cracks already showing. And obviously the present day team is kind of worried that might be the case in their regard as well. I also love the whole Arnie and Sharon situation of like she had like kept his gun, but she had put it in an urn. I'm like, why the urn? We never found out what the purpose of that was. But yeah, she kept his gun, and he's reading a lot into it because he's like, oh, but still, it's like, oh, I thought you said like you hated her. He's like, I do, but it's my gun, and the fact that she kept it, it's like, yeah, we were a mess together, but it was a hot mess, and you're like, Jesus. Even she was like, oh, like it was so explosive and amazing, and the idiot's probably thinking too much into it, but it's like, yeah. And the moment they're around each other, like, I hate you too. Oh, I love you too. And then start making up. Blah, blah, blah. You're like, geez, like the range of emotions. It's like if this were any other situation, they'd be hate banging right now. So. All right, go. I was censoring myself. They'd be hate fucking right now or something like that. It's such a weird relationship because it's such a heavy love-hate relationship thing that they've kind of got going on. I mean, I'm sure that, being spies and stuff like that, obviously took its toll on them. And I think it's so interesting, too, when they say, like, hey, Lance, it's like, it's kind of wild to hold a grudge for 15 years, which is interesting considering you and... Sharon had a grudge against each other for 15 years, but it's like, to be fair, there's a little bit of emotion connected of like, oh yeah, like there's love involved, so that kind of makes your dynamic a little bit different, considering that's not just like some regular person you work with, that's your ex. So, but yeah, Lance, ended up getting recruited by Crypsis, and he's the one that kind of informed him a lot about what Omega Sector is. I like a lot of their infrastructure, kind of how they operate. Because for him, it's like, oh, I was betrayed and left behind by the people that should have had my back. No one listened to me. So it's like, right, I didn't need them as much as they needed me, referencing Crypsis. So... And then he also brings up some interesting stuff, which seems like now we're like creating, like there's been this overarching thing that's been happening in the background where it's like Crypsis is kind of latched on to some of the team's missions. They referenced the Paris situation, the Panama situation, the Mexico situation. So now I'm almost like, have they been directly involved with every situation that Harry and Helen have been involved with since the beginning of the series? Or is it just like they just happen to be aware of those situations that they were involved in? Not that, but it's like this is some cabal criminal organization. I guess it's kind of like almost like the criminal counterpart to Omega Sector. So maybe. Well, could we end up finding out later on? They end up referencing a lot of the militia, the soldiers they had with them, Lance had working with him from Crypsis. They were all pulled from different agencies around the world. So like this is like it's basically I guess almost probably a mercenary like border, like a no allegiance like spy organization. You can only assume like whoever's at the top of it has to be an ex-spy in some capacity. The fact is they had different, like once again, these are people from different agencies around the world. So it kind of shows the scale and reach of this organization if it's able to pull in people from whatnot like Mossad, MI6 and stuff like that. So hell of a situation to fight their way out of though. Like they were obviously surrounded and Luther and Maria were worried that they weren't, in sync anymore because it's like 1, 2, we'll go on 3. It's like 3 as in 3 or 3 as in go. And it's like Gib had to be like, no, you guys got this. You're the perfect team. You're in sync, which they did their thing, locked and loaded, took a lot of people down. Obviously, Arnie and Sharon did their thing, backed up by Helen and Harry. and they were willing to sacrifice themselves to take down Lance. It's like, right, let's blow the guy, because they'd been in a situation like that before, but they were willing to go head first into hell together. So they ended up getting caught up in the explosion, but later on their bodies weren't found. I don't know if, I mean, probably would have brought it up if Lance's body wasn't found, but yeah, which is interesting considering, like, right, Lance was supposed to be dead because his boat exploded. Now, and obviously there was no body found, so he ended up being alive. So it's heavily implied, obviously. It's like, Sharon and Arnie are still alive, but obviously they have to go in hiding because they, for one, want to have nothing to do with Omega Sector, and Crypsis is out there and probably still going to be targeting them. So I don't know if this is the last we've heard of them. We could probably see them potentially show up in the future. But also, like, there's 15 years for them to catch up on. Like, once again, a lot of hate, sex going on. You know, there's going to be, I mean, who knows? Then we had the Maria and Luther thing where it's like, hey, we're back in sync and everything. And hey, I brought you to coffee because it's my day. But then Quinn shows up with 2 cups and it's like, oh, she's like, is this not my day? And then Luther's like, yeah, Maria was just going to take this to someone else. So you're like, and they ended up saying something at the same time and they looked at each other. So I'm like, oh, I'm assuming that doesn't bode well for the Quinn and Luther relationship. Because it's like, yeah, that's weird and that's awkward, and now it's like I mean, once again, there's a partnership aspect of it all, but it's like their history. I don't know if you could, I mean, they kind of moved past it, but it all came back to the surface the moment Luther kind of referenced it early in the season. We have no idea if, like, I mean, we don't know if it was always in the back of Maria's mind until Luther brought it up earlier this season. But also, once again, it's like, they haven't, it doesn't seem like, at the very least, either one of them has dated since they broke up. So him being the first one potentially in a relationship post their breakup makes that even harder. I mean, maybe she'll end up finding someone, because she has Kevlar, but like maybe she'll end up finding someone, and that'll make Luther jealous and just kind of throw them off. I don't know. That just definitely feels like it's going to be like the end game of that's going to be Luther and Maria, but we'll have to wait and see. That just seemed awkward, and Luther's trying not to be awkward in the situation because he's caught between these 2 people who he's got an intimate relationship with, because, hey, this is my ex, but this is also my partner, but this is also my new girlfriend, and juggling these dynamics because he's literally standing in the middle of them like, so how that's all going to work is going to be interesting. We also had Gibbs talking to Ava and apologizing because he had actually texted her while stuff was popping off, and it's like, right, he recognizes what he did was wrong, but he does still care about her, and he wonders, can there be a future between them? And she's like, oh, no, I'll think about it. I'll have my bot talk to your bot. So she's joking, but, you know, it seems like things might be in a more positive direction. We'll have to kind of wait and see where things kind of go on that front. And Harry and Helen promising that, hey, we're not going to end up being like Arnie and Sharon. It's like, well, it kind of still worked out for them in the end, but it's like, once again, I think your dynamic's slightly different enough, and you're very different people, very different circumstances, but it's still that thing of and we've seen it over the course of the show of like how that's, you know, changed their relationship and affected their relationship. But I do believe in the end it has brought them closer, because once again they're living these true lies now instead of these full-blown lies that they were living beforehand, you know. So I think that is a very important thing to kind of consider. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this goes, especially because they set up this Crypsis thing. It's like, it's not like that's resolved. It's like, right, Lance and his squad, that was like one small fraction of something much larger. Once again, they've been tied to so many, like, I think, terrorist acts and stuff like that. So they might have their hands in so much criminal stuff around the world. So eventually the 2 are going to cross paths, probably more and more going forward. Maybe especially considering I don't know if there was anything about Maria, Gibb, or Luther, maybe because but it seemed like Harry and Helen are like the ones at the forefront, which might be an issue because they are the ones that have a family, because we don't know what Luther and Maria's situation, like, do they have parents? And even if they didn't, it's like you have kids that could be taken advantage of, like but you also have like an operative who lives next door, so that probably will come in handy if time comes that needs to come up again. So like I said, we'll just have to wait to see where everything ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. good day and good